I have to go to work now. What about the hospital? My husband suddenly said this to me on the way to the hospital when I started having contractions in the middle of the typhoon. I resisted desperately as he tried to pull me out of the car, but I was eventually dragged out. The heavy rain battered my body and the strong wind made it hard to stand. That's impossible. My screams were drowned out by the rain and wind, and I watched in dismay as the taillights of the car drove away. Even if I wanted to call for help, I don't have my cell phone with me, and there are no cars passing through the typhoon. As another wave of intense pain hit, I nearly collapsed, but steeled myself. I'm the only one who can save this baby. I have to stay strong, so I walked 3 hours through this storm to the hospital where I gave birth to my child safely. Holding my newborn daughter, joy was mixed with intense anger toward my husband. My name is Amanda. I am a 29-year-old married woman. Originally, I worked as a teacher in the city, but 3 years ago, I met my husband, Tom, through a friend's introduction. After a year of dating, we got married. I moved to Tom's rural hometown, which doesn't even have a convenience store. Tom is an executive at FIL's construction company and has a sufficient income, so I decided to become a full-time housewife. We built a house and started living together as a couple, maintaining a good relationship with his nearby parents. Both of them were very kind to me, saying, "Thank you for coming to such a rural area, despite the world's customs and family connections." I managed to adapt to the community without much trouble. As for our married life, Tom didn't do any housework at all, but I was okay with it as long as he worked hard at his job. Time passed, and on our first wedding anniversary, I found out I was pregnant after a checkup at a general hospital about an hour away. I confirmed the pregnancy and immediately told Tom. He just said, "I see," which left me feeling a bit disappointed, but his parents were very happy and took good care of me. After that, my pregnancy began, but it was far from easy. I had severe morning sickness, feeling like I had intense seasickness all day, unable to even get out of bed. This naturally meant I couldn't do housework often. One day, I was bedridden from morning, unable to do anything. Tom came home and asked, "Hey, where's my dinner?" I couldn't make it because I felt sick. "I'm sorry, but could you eat the frozen food I bought?" "What? You've been home all day, and you're slacking off." "But I'm pregnant with your child and fighting morning sickness." I tried to get him to somehow understand this hardship, but Tom would not listen to me. Instead, he said harshly, "Pregnancy isn't an illness. Stop using it as an excuse to slack off. Make dinner now." Before I could say anything, nausea hit me, and I ran to the bathroom. Tom threw more harsh words at me as I was hunched over. "Don't think you can gain sympathy like that." "I'm not trying to. I'm really feeling sick," I replied from the bathroom. Tom sighed loudly, exaggeratedly, "Just do what you have to do. Next time when I come home, and there's no food, you won't get away with it." In the end, I had to prepare his meal that day despite feeling nauseous. Tom continued to show no concern for my pregnancy and demanded perfect housework, as before. And if things were done even a little bit the way he wanted them done, he would make me sit on the floor and give me a long lecture. Maybe it was because he lived that way. When I was 6 months pregnant, I was diagnosed with preterm labor and told by the doctor to stay on strict bed rest. I told Tom, but he didn't show any mercy. One day, he harshly scolded me because I hadn't folded the laundry by the time he got home. "You've been slacking off on the housework again. Didn't I tell you not to be so lazy? The doctor told me to rest, otherwise, the baby. I don't care. Who do you think is supporting you? I don't need a wife who can't even do housework. If I kick you out, you'll be the one in trouble." I was so shocked by his words that the thought of divorce briefly crossed my mind. But then I thought of my parents and in-laws, who were so happy about the marriage and pregnancy. Above all, I could not move with the birth of my child so close, and I had to endure it alone with no one to talk to. Soon, I reached full term. At that time, it was typhoon season, and the weather forecast warned that a typhoon was likely to head my area within a few days. I heard that there is a jinx, babies are more likely to be born on typhoon days, but since there were still about 2 weeks until my due date, I was optimistic that I would be able to have the baby after the typhoon had passed. When the typhoon approached, heavy rain started to fall, and the wind began to howl. I was at home with Tom when suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. At first, I tried to endure it, but the pain came every 20 minutes and grew stronger. No doubt, this is labor, I was sure of it, and immediately asked Tom to drive me to the hospital, but he responded with an annoyed look. It's a hassle to go out in this heavy rain and wind. Take a taxi. I tried to call a taxi despite the pain, but I couldn't get one due to the bad weather. It takes an hour by car to get to the hospital, please drive me. When I persistently pleaded with tears in my eyes, Tom reluctantly got into the car, and I managed to sit in the passenger seat. By this time, the typhoon was so close that it had become too intense to stand. As we drove on the mountain road, I clutched my aching belly, watching the wipers struggle against the rain. When suddenly, Tom received a phone call. Got it. I'll be there right away. After hanging up, he said with a blank expression, I have to go to work now. Walk to the hospital. I was shocked and yelled at him, I am about to give birth, and I can't walk in this weather. But he stopped the car, came around to the passenger side, and dragged me out despite my resistance. I stood in the pouring rain and wind, watching the car's taillights disappear in shock. I immediately tried to call for help, but I couldn't find my cell phone, which I must have dropped in the car, and there was not a single car passing by during this typhoon. Another intense pain hit me, and I nearly collapsed, but I steeled myself, I'm the only one who can save this baby. I have to be strong. I walked through the heavy rain and wind to the hospital. Every time the contraction pain came, I would groan, stop, subside, and then walk a little bit, and I kept repeating this, so it took me 3 hours to get to the hospital. When I finally arrived, soaking wet and exhausted, the hospital staff was very surprised. After explaining the situation, I was immediately taken to the delivery room. I gave birth less than an hour after arriving. When I held my little girl in my arms for the first time, my heart was filled with joy, but there was an emotion that was growing inside me, as big as my excitement of the birth of my own child. How could he leave his wife who was in labor in the middle of a typhoon? I can't call him a husband anymore. I will never forgive him. It was the moment my patience reached its limit. After the exhausting birth, I fell asleep and woke up to find my in-laws and relatives gathered in my hospital room. Amanda, you're awake. My father-in-law looked at me with concern, and my mother-in-law was in a slight panic. I heard from the hospital staff it was tough yesterday, wasn't it? You walked here in the middle of a typhoon, and if you had been a little late, you would have been in danger. What the hell happened? Where is Tom? Holding back tears, I told them, and to my relatives, I have something important to tell you. After that, I revealed all of Tom's actions, including what he did during my pregnancy. My in-laws and relatives were shocked. That guy, how could he do such a thing? We understand, Amanda, just rest your body, leave the rest to us. With angry expressions, my in-laws and relatives left the hospital room. Although I wanted to deal with my husband myself, I was too weak to even get out of bed. I expected that if I told them everything like this, they would discipline my husband. Additionally, I called one of the relatives who was also Tom's coworker, named Bill, and made a request. Enjoying my time with my beloved child, after spending a good amount of time with my beloved child and finally getting used to breastfeeding and changing diapers, it was time for me to be discharged. My baby and I take a taxi home, but there were several cars gathered in front of our house, and also, for some reason, our fence is broken. I enter the house anxiously and witnessed a shocking scene. In the middle of the living room, Tom lay half crying with bandages on his head and casts on his arms and legs, surrounded by my in-laws and many relatives, glaring at him. What is going on? I muttered, and Tom looked at me and shouted, "Amanda, you're back. Help me. Why are you injured?" Tom suddenly became evasive, looking away. Myself and answered for him. "After abandoning you that day, he went drinking somewhere. He drank all night and got into an accident, drunk driving." "What? Driving under the influence of alcohol?" "After visiting you at the hospital, we came to scold Tom. We were shocked to find him crashed into the house fence. In-laws and relatives called an ambulance, and then the police came, and it was very troubled. All of us, including me, glared sharply at Tom, but he averted his eyes and said, That is not the point. Let's focus on the baby. Come on, let's celebrate the birth." He tried to crawl towards me with a forced smile. "Don't come near me," I instinctively stepped back, shielding the baby. "Amanda, why? You abandoned me in a typhoon while I was in labor, and then you ended up drinking and driving. You are not qualified to be a father. I won't let you touch my child." Tom's face turned red, and he began to tremble. "Why? You're just a wife. Don't get cocky." But I dropped a bombshell. "Actually, that day, you weren't at work, right?" What are you talking about?" "I know you were at a woman's house from a nearby bar. I have witnesses and evidence." I had asked Bill to investigate my suspicion of Tom's infidelity. In our small town, it was already rumored that Tom was involved with a woman from the bar. I received photos from Bill, showing Tom visiting the woman's house. The room fell silent, and everyone stared coldly at Tom. What nonsense? The only one talking nonsense is you. Even in this situation, Tom tried to lie, but my father-in-law shouted at him, making Tom's face go pale. My father-in-law continued in an angry voice, as Amanda said, "You're unfit to be a father. In fact, you're not even fit to be a decent human being. Dad, Tom, you're fired from the company, effective immediately." What? Fired? Tom turned pale and started to panic, but my father-in-law firmly said, "Driving under the influence of alcohol is a one-time out from the company's point of view. You don't have any complaints, right?" Don't say that. Having lived comfortably as an executive in his father's company, he was now panicking at the thought of losing his income. "Mom, please calm down." Realizing his father's determination, he started pleading with his mother, but she pushed him away. His eyes widened in shock as my mother-in-law shouted at him, "What you did to Amanda is unforgivable, and on top of that, you are cheating. I can't consider you my son anymore. We are cutting ties." Cutting ties? Tom stood in shock while his mother glared at him with tearful eyes, and his father and relatives nodded sternly. Seeing no allies, Tom looked at me with a desperate expression and a trembling voice. "Dad, Mom, think about it. I have to support them. If you fire me and cut ties with me, you'll be putting your adorable grandchild out on the street too. Amanda, you don't want that, right?" I glared at Tom and shouted with all my might, "I don't need your support. We're getting a divorce." What? No way. I never want to see your face again. We're leaving. Wait, please. I'll demand $30,000 for your infidelity and child support, and you better pay up. As Tom stood there stunned, my father-in-law spoke quietly, "We respect Amanda's decision and will support her. We'll make sure Tom pays what he owes." I bowed my head to my father-in-law, and Tom finally broke down in tears. "No, please, Amanda, forgive me. Don't leave me." As Tom, with tears and snot all over his face, tried to cling to me, the relatives restrained him. I waved again to my in-laws and relatives, packed my things, and left the house that day. After that, Tom and I got divorced. He quickly transferred the compensation money, and I received half of the child support from the sale of the house. He agreed to pay the remaining $700 monthly. I also demanded $20,000 from his mistress and won. The mistress, now ostracized in a small town, moved away. Tom was indeed fired from his father's company and cut off by his family. My father-in-law arranged for Tom to work on a fishing boat, saying he wouldn't let him off until he paid all the child support. As for me, I returned to my parents' house and focused on raising my child with their help. Soon, I'll be returning to my teaching job. My in-laws still visit my daughter often. She is growing up loved by both sets of grandparents. From now on, I want to live a bright life, putting my daughter's happiness first. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and if you're curious to see where this journey takes us next, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss a single update. Your support is what keeps this channel alive and kicking, and every like, comment, and share means the world to us. We've got plenty more stories, insights, and surprises coming your way, so stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.